In July 2017, I decided to terminate my membership of the Tibetan Buddhist organization Rigpa. It also meant the end of my 25-year-long relationship with my teacher Sogyal Rinpoche, Rigpa's spiritual leader. Increasing rumors and messages concerning sexual, physical and psychological abuse, as well as extravagant lifestyle choices, have damaged my faith in Sogyal as spiritual teacher. In my view, a Buddhist teacher who preaches love and compassion should also embody these qualities himself. Following my own feelings of confusion and anger, as well as the struggle of others, I took up the idea to interview several people who are involved in this difficult situation. How do they perceive the actions of Sogyal Rinpoche? How do they cope with the accusations? And to what extent do Sogyal's teachings remain valid? In this series, I want to re-evaluate my relationship with Buddhism and the Dharma. How was your first time with Rigpa and Sogyal Rinpoche?
Yeah, my first impression was not good, you know, because he came in and sat down and started growling at people, and I just went, ugh, that's not very nice. But then he started to teach, and everything that he said, I just understood. I just immediately understood it. So it felt to me like an affirmation, if you like, of my own wisdom.
Tahlia Newland is a writer, editor and artist in Australia. She is the founder of What Now, a group of former Rigpa students who stay connected through a blog and Facebook group. Here they share information and insights and provide care for victims and other people who are involved in the Rigpa situation. Newland was a Rigpa member for 20 years, but resigned after first hearing of the abuse from other Rigpa members. She initiated the What Now group the evening that the first critical letter was published by 8 former Rigpa students.
I kept going to retreats because, you know, I had such a community there. I had friends which were very dear to me. So it sort of got to the point where I was going to retreat for them, you know, as much as for anything else. And then on this retreat, it was the last one that was by the lake. There was an evening session for the Dzogchen Mandala, and we all gathered for a special teaching. And Rinpoche he turned up, and, you know, we all sat very expectant. And he spent an hour like completely demolishing this girl, abusing her. I mean, he was literally bullying her. You know, when I first saw his behavior early on, you know, I thought this is not good. And then, you know, you get told, well, this is actually kindness. And, you know, because so much of what he said was good and true, I just kind of trusted everybody and believed it without actually really examining that. And it was only at this point in 2016 where I found myself sitting there watching something that in my normal life I would never have sat so quietly and compliantly and just watched something like that. And I looked around at all the people sitting there watching this, and nobody's, like, no expressions on anybody's faces, no reactions at all. And I just thought, and I just went, oh, this is creepy. There's something really, really creepy here. And I said to the girl next to me, I can't watch this. You know, I've got to go. And she said, oh, you can't go. So you can't leave. You know, what if he sees you? What if he jumps on you? And I thought, yeah, you know, this guy's really scary. He's up there and he's really angry, and I want to leave, and I don't want to have anything to do with this. And this is, you know, things are coming up, and I'm going to myself, well, just let it go, let it go, let it go. And I'm going, no, this is just not right. Anyway, I left, and I went outside, and I went, I can't do this anymore. I can't watch this. I can't be part of this. And that was the first thing. I did come back, but when I heard from my friend Sanjay and Joanne and them, because I spoke to them before the letter came out, when they told me what actually had been going on, I was amazed and horrified at the extent of it, but I knew immediately that there was no lies there, that my teacher was completely and utterly capable of that. I never for a moment didn't believe them, because I'd seen enough to know that it's only a matter of degree.
Joanne and Sanjay were very close students to Sogyal Rinpoche.
Yeah, and Damcho.
And Damcho. But what you saw or experienced yourself was mainly the bullying.
Yes, if I had seen him hit anybody, I would have been out of there like a shot. It was when Sanjay told me that he actually hit him often, hard, that for me everything just fell apart at that moment, because something like emotional abuse is kind of vague. It's very hard to pin down. It's hard to say at what point you would call it abuse and what point it's not abuse. And you're seeing people maybe, like once a year for a period of 10 days. You don't know what it's like for them the rest of the year, so you only see little bits of that. And and then sexual abuse is so very, again, it's hard to know, hard to define where consent comes, like it's a very complex sort of thing. But hitting, that's assault, and it's really clear. It's very, very simple. Somebody hits you, you're hurt. There's no question in my mind about that. So for me, it was just like, for me at that moment that I heard that this was not a once in a lifetime occasional sort of, wake up thing. It was a daily event, and people were, being injured, that the whole thing fell apart. I just realized that this teacher was not the man that I thought he was.
There's this concept of crazy wisdom, but can you imagine there's a form of crazy wisdom without abuse?
Yeah. I mean, I very much agree with Mingyur Rinpoche. Abuse is very, very different to crazy wisdom, and abuse is not a teaching method. I think the concept of crazy wisdom is very dangerous, but you don't actually have to do a lot of research to see that one of the things about crazy wisdom is genuine crazy wisdom is that it's very unpredictable, whereas the kind of things that Sogyal was doing were very predictable. He behaved in this way constantly, daily, dishing out the same things to the same people, using the same methods for all the different people. It wasn't just an occasional crazy thing. It wasn't crazy wisdom. It was just damn right crazy. I think it's like the Dalai Lama says, you can't even consider yourself a crazy wisdom master unless, you're flying, you're doing miracles. This is, it's not something for an ordinary teacher. It's only something that can be done by a very, very rare and highly realized master. And that people think that Sogyal Rinpoche is such a master, I think it's just a mass delusion.
Quite soon after the letter was published, you started the What Now, a weblog, and you started making videos.
I did it immediately. When I heard that the letter was going to come out, I said, well, who's going to care for all these people that are going to be shocked and appalled? Because I'd already experienced that. And I had like several weeks of going through all the shock and beginning of the process of examination. And I realized that when this went out to all the Dzogchen Mandala people, other people were going to be experiencing the same thing, and they would need some support. And so I said, well, how are we going to support these people? And the answer was that they were planning to make some kind of website where people could come and have discussions, but nobody had actually got round to making it. So, and I said, well, you can't put this letter out without somewhere for people to go, to talk about it. They'll need to talk about it. So I said, well, I know how to set up blogs. I can whip one up in an hour. And so they said, yep, go for it. So I did. So I got it put up there so that the link could go on the bottom of the letter before it went out. So it was set up like the night that the letter went out, just in time, just before the letter went out. So that it was part of the idea was that this whole letter was coming from a place of concern for the Sangha, and caring for the Sangha was part of that. And yeah, I just found myself in a situation where I had the skills required, and so I did it. Set it up. Yeah, it was set up basically for Rigpa students like me who just found out the truth about their Lama, and suddenly they had all these questions and they had to start examining all the issues and that kind of thing. So we wanted it to be a place for, so where we could educate and share reflections and that kind of thing. And then the Facebook group, that is specifically for care, for helping people to process, care and just support for the people that are still dissatisfied with the way it's not been resolved. There are people who've just gone, okay, well, I've had enough of all of this now. I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm just, going on with my life. I'm either staying with Rigpa or I'm not. And then there's people who just still want to keep awareness of the issues in the public mind to make sure that it doesn't just get swept under the carpet again and forgotten about, that it does actually solved, dealt with. I don't know, resolved some way.
But you wrote several blogs with titles as is Vajrayana occult or is Rigpa occult. Where did these questions come from?
Well, it was Rigpa who decided that they were going to sue the French lawyer for trying to suggest that they were occult. So they kind of brought it up in the first place. But no, there'd been whispers before. It was a question we were going to have to get to at some point, but it's not a question that people want to talk about. You can't jump into these things as a process, and there are people that, a few months ago would never have considered that the cult word would be applicable to Rigpa, but now they're open to looking at that. And so I think as a group, we've been looking at the material on cults, and people they're just looking at it in an open-minded way. But we are finding that the material on healing, on recovering from a cult, is very useful. Even if you don't want to call it a cult, you still do have to look back at your experience and integrate it into your life. You still have to evaluate what was useful out of your experience and what wasn't. So we've been looking at our own experiences, looking back, and they call it reconstructing our story. And so you can step back and look at what you went through. And this is, more important for people who are directly abused, obviously, but, all of us, anyone who is shocked and affected by this, is a great process for them to go through, is just to look back and see from a more objective perspective just how it was, basically, how it was for you, and to look and see, well, were you a little bit manipulated? Like me, this idea that hitting someone is kind. I have to actually look at that and go, hang on a minute, that's why did I believe that? Why was I so gullible? Because there's something very, twisted about that. Completely changing somebody's mind from seeing something harmful as bad to seeing it as good. It's a big twist. You could call that brainwashing. So we need to look at that. So there's that process, and then so there's the reconstructing your story, and then examining the beliefs. And we haven't got to examining the beliefs yet. you know, we've kind of discussed these things in the past, but it's just becoming a little bit more systematic now, if you like. And I think we're going to we've already talked about the kind of beliefs that we held that were either distorted or directly damaging. And, you know, we'll get to the point where we'll go through and start sort of really looking at them and asking ourselves, well, we swallowed this hook, line and sinker, but is it really true, or is it Buddhism, or whatever? And I'll parallel that on the blog, like that will sort of, the theme will probably carry through on the blog.
Yeah, this is kind of in a way it's a little bit, how do you say, provoking title. Is Vajrayana occult or is Rigpa occult? But then the question is Vajrayana occult?
My answer to that is no, Vajrayana is not a cult. But Vajrayana is a religion that can very, very easily become a cult.
Why?
Because the Lama has a lot of power, and an unscrupulous Lama can abuse that power. And because the way it's set up, you know, with devotion is so key to it, you need a particularly skillful teacher to be able to, you know, teach that aspect of devotion without, you know, particularly Westerners falling into this savior sort of ideal that we have. You know, it's like, oh, you know, I just give him my devotion and he'll solve all my problems. And it's just really easy, I think, for Westerners to look at their lamas like that, and for lamas to play on that when they shouldn't. So I think when done properly, where the Lama understands that they are a vehicle for the student's realization, not the ultimate aim of that realization, you know, like that they are a conduit, if you like, or an inspiration. They're not, they shouldn't be the they should not be the focus of the devotion. The student has to understand that their devotion is really to the Lama's nature of mind, not the person. I mean, you can't separate them, but what happened in Rigpa is that people became devoted to the person, and the person became very demanding. And the idea of, you know, honoring the Lama with your body, speech and mind became doing whatever, you know, fulfilling whatever whim he happened to have. Whereas if you remember the ultimate meaning of Lama, you know, there's the four kinds of Lamas. You know, there's the physical teacher, there's the Dharma, there's the there's worldly phenomenon, you know, like just life, and then there's the nature of mind. So those are the four aspects of the Lama. If you remember those four, the actual physical Lama, he's just one aspect of that, right? So if you really taught it properly, so that everybody knew that, you know, the whole idea of Lama and the whole idea of your devotion is not actually to this person, then there's no danger. Human nature being as it is, it's just really, really easy to abuse that power.
Do you say Sogyal Rinpoche or Sogyal Lakar?
I say Sogyal Rinpoche because, you know, I think maybe it's just programmed into me from so many years, but I think too, he'll always be precious to me. It's just a personal thing. I think for me, it honors the fact that, you know, I did do quite a lot of Vajrayana practice, had an enormous effect on me. And, you know, I'll always be grateful for him for introducing me to that and for providing the opportunities that he did. I mean, I don't think it's healthy to forget that. And so for me, I guess continuing to use that honorific is just, it's just a personal thing. It's what I call him. It's what I've always called him. But it does also honor the fact that there's still a connection there. And, you know, there was he was precious to me, and he still is precious to me.
So what has to be done now, you think? Because what I understand from your video vlog is that you think it's important that Sogyal Rinpoche shows regret and makes his apologies to the abused students.
You know, I think that's very important for his own healing. The apologies that have come out so far are what you call pseudo apologies. They apologize for that people feel hurt. You know, there's nothing to indicate that he's actually accepted that he caused the hurt, and you know, that to if he did that, that would be helpful not only to the students who'd been harmed, but it would also be very helpful to him as well. But I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, you know, and in a way I've given up on Rigpa and Sogyal, really. They'll do what they want. I think for me now it's more just a matter of helping people to think critically about these things and to make sure that the questions are there in the public sphere so that someone looking for a Tibetan Buddhist group or looking for a spiritual path are aware of the issues before they go into it. So they're much more critical, so they don't just rock up to any group, whether it's Rigpa or some other group, and are as naive as I was, you know. So that's why I say it's about education and stimulating inquiry, so we can be more educated in our choices.
Right, but you don't expect Sogyal Rinpoche will come with an apology in the future?
I don't expect, but it would be nice. I mean, I think Tibetan Buddhism, and it's very hard to talk about Tibetan Buddhism as a whole because it's not a whole, it's a bunch of different lamas. But at some point, they will have to get together and cut this kind of bullshit, excuse the language, out of the religion. Because if they don't, it's just going to, I mean, it's just a terrible religion for so long as any Tibetan Buddhist group can have abuse in it. There's something, you know, very wrong there, and they'll have to deal with it at some point, or it's just like a festering sore that, you know, that's just going to get worse and worse and worse. But I can't push them to do that. You know, that they'll have to come to that at some point. You know, all I can do is just do what seems to be right to me, and I do this all very spontaneously, what I do, so it just sort of comes out, I hope, from a good space that somehow, you know, amongst all the other causes and conditions might be just, you know, pushing a little bit towards some kind of resolution at some point in the future, if not for Rigpa, then hopefully for Tibetan Buddhism as a whole.
Yeah. Is it likely that there will be a Sangha with ex-Rigpa students?
Well, we have a Facebook group called Dharma Companions, which is for ex-Rigpa people and their friends, which means that if you're still in Rigpa and you want to keep in contact with your ex-Rigpa friends, you can be part of the group as well. So, and that's called Dharma Companions. It's just a Facebook group, another group, where we don't talk about the abuse. We just talk about our spiritual life and inspire each other and that kind of thing. So in a way that, you know, you could call that a kind of an online Sangha, where we can keep in touch.
Do you have any clue how your dharmic future will look like now?
Certainly freer. I don't have to believe anything anymore, you know. I don't have to do anything a certain way anymore. I can just sit and take the lead from what comes up in the space of my own being. So religion's really helpful at a certain point because it provides you with structure and that kind of thing. But at a certain point, that structure can become stifling and limiting. And so for me, I've got to the point where the structure is more of a limitation than a help.
Do you still call yourself a Buddhist?
Yeah, I think, yeah. It still fits my philosophy, and the Dharma's in me, you know, it's in how I relate to people, it's in how I relate to every moment in my life.